Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Baumgarten, but I expect you already know that. And I welcome you to this discussion on Facebook Live, and a special shout out to our friends at paltalk.com who are also watching. We're simulcasting over there. There are a lot of things that we do in life, a lot of policies that are full of good intentions. And a lot of them do a lot of good things. But sometimes there are unintended consequences. And one of the things we noticed last week, the Labor Department statistics came out. And while we're trending in the right direction with regard to unemployment, we're not where the Biden administration had hoped to be. So that's viewed by many as a failure. We're not where we should be. And a lot of folks, not the president, the White House is refuting this suggestion. But a lot of people suggest that the enhanced federal unemployment benefits are the cause of this problem, because people would rather sit on their tuchuses at home collecting those unemployment benefits than going back to work. And a lot of folks who are now trying to fight their way back from the pandemic, folks meaning business owners, especially small business owners, are struggling, believe it or not, to find people to work for them. Well, Chris Whalen CPA, Red Bank, New Jersey, who we've had on several times in the past, has a bunch of small business clients across the nation. And who would know better about this problem than you, Chris Whalen? Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much. Yes, we are seeing this across the board on almost every state right now. A number of reasons for that. We just touch on the unemployment, which, unemployment, I believe, was supposed to be a stopgap. You lost your accounting job and you want to find time within your industry, to get another job. So it's good to have some unemployment, just so you don't have to rush out and get another job in an industry you don't want to work in. But having the prolonged unemployment does have a lot of human nature set in. And we're seeing that there are people that would rather, they're not making maybe as much net or as they were working, but they'd rather have the time off. And some of them are working under the table. So that's just one of the reasons that we're seeing, I believe, like you said up front, that the unemployment, the benefits being continued, is causing this problem, amongst other things.
Last night I stopped by, as I do Sunday nights, at a diner where I know the manager, and we break bread together. And I asked him about this in anticipation of this interview. He says, we are having a dickens of a time finding people to work on the floor and people to work in the back, meaning in the kitchen. He says it's very difficult to hire people. And are you finding that amongst your clients as well?
Definitely. And, of course, some in service jobs like you're talking about, not in the white collar as much, let's say, but it's even happening there. You have moms that are home with the kids, sometimes more than the fathers during pandemic time, are having to be tending to the kids when they're working virtually. So that's also having an impact too, right? So you have females that are mothers that are mothering. And so that's when they're asked to come back, physical locations, right? That's been happening in the past. That's what's happening, right? They're working on home virtually. They're juggling the kids and work like moms always do. But now they have to come back 2 or 3 days a week physically, and the kids are still out of school. And that falls on the moms quite often. So that's also part of what's happening. Women being, a great part of the workforce, if not 50%. Imagine that every mother on the planet now has to decide. And so they can't readily come back to work on site again.
Yeah, especially with the kids, if they are in a situation where the kids are long distance learning as opposed to being in school. You almost don't have a choice in the matter. You have to stay out. The Chamber of Commerce, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, believes that 1 in 4 people are making more money sitting at home collecting the enhanced unemployment than they would if they actually went to work. So is the real solution to this raising the minimum wage, perhaps?
No, I think raising that would be, that's a form of universal basic income, like unemployment is. What we need to do is limit the unemployment to a certain amount of time to give you a chance to get into your sector or industry you want to work in. But if not, then that happens for centuries. We need to move to a different sector. So if we don't do that, then there's going to be stagnation, right? I have industries that can't get workers that need to shift over to a new line of work. Like I said, but the universal basic income or the minimum wage even going up to $15. Remember, all that is a tax. It's welfare. If I have someone giving me $5 an hour value, I'm giving them $15. Well, that $10 is welfare or universal basic income. There's no difference. So we really need to reduce the minimum wage, especially for teenagers. I think that people under 18 should get like $5 an hour. Just give them a chance to work. The minimum wage laws have hurt teenagers working for the past 25, 30 years. And they need experience. They don't need the money. They need to come in and work a counter and work with customers. So I'm a little counterintuitive, but I sort of have this, there's been a developmental problem amongst teenagers and even college grads. They're a little behind emotionally and socially and from a business perspective than their counterparts were, say, 30 years ago. I think that starts with fewer teenagers working at 13 and 14, like we did, Gary, right? They dig in those ditches.
Chris Whalen CPA, Red Bank, New Jersey, is my guest today. Now, what I'm about to say is very anecdotal, but I think it is a problem. It's an endemic problem. I've been taking Uber every day, Monday through Friday, either from home to work or from Penn Station now to work every day. And it seems that New York City, and I presume other areas of the country as well, are starting to open up a little bit more. So the demand for the Ubers is greater than it was in the beginning when they were clamoring for my business. They would line up outside Fox, hoping that they would get the next call for an employee from Fox, for example. And as it turns out, and I'm sure it's because of these unemployment benefits, a lot of those Uber drivers who are on a very narrow margin anyway are staying home still. And as a result, the demand is outpacing the supply. So the other day, Chris, I needed to take an 8-mile ride from Fox, which is located in Rockefeller Center, to the Secaucus Junction train station where my car was parked. 8 miles. Right. It was $107 to go 8 miles. And Saturday, when I got out of work, I just needed to go to Penn Station. I missed my train because there was no Ubers available. By the time I got to Penn Station and I called, and that's 1 mile, folks. I called for the Uber 20 minutes before I had to get to Penn Station. They didn't get there in time. Wow. So I had to stand around Penn Station with, unfortunately, the emotionally disturbed homeless people for an hour waiting for the next train, because on Saturday, the trains run infrequently. So I think that's a direct result. And I don't want to make it all about Gary, but I think that my experience is a direct result of people rather sit at home, make more money.
Well, don't remember, that's sometimes true, but remember that if you become a gig worker, let's say I go on unemployment and I'm collecting, and I'm not going back to work, but that might know I'm not going back to a W-2 job. So some people double up, because if you're working for cash or as a 1099, the state systems will never know, right? The unemployment systems are based on, oh, you got another job. We're going to know next quarter that you got too much benefit. So people are double dipping, right? They can do Uber. That's not reported to the state unemployment system.
So they could be working. If they
of course. So they're able-bodied, and why not take the money? And then they're making double what they made, and so they're not going back to a W. That's not everyone, but this happens quite often, and people don't think of it. They think, oh, well, someone's sitting home playing Xbox. No, they're making the most of this free money, and then they're also working part-time or gig, and most likely no one's going to find out. So that's why we need to get rid of the unemployment. Only have it for, remember, what we need to have with benefits is a disincentive, right? Because and else it becomes a crutch. You and I've seen that for decades. So that's what happens with this. It's supposed to be used as a stopgap, but any financial incentive or program that takes away the urgency to get rid of that program is a failure, right? So it could be food stamps, could be that, or welfare could be that, or just like this unemployment ad infinitum. now there's no disincentive for it. So that's the measure that I use to see if a program is helpful or hurtful. How big is the disincentive to get out of it? In this case, there's none. There's so many positives to keeping the unemployment, right?
So our guest is Chris Whalen, CPA, Red Bank, New Jersey. And I was talking to a police officer about this issue. And it's possible that this enhanced benefit will expire in September. They could extend it, but at this point, it probably will expire in September. He is concerned that when it expires, maybe people have trouble because they haven't been looking for work during this period. And you're supposed to, when you're on unemployment, look for work. Maybe they won't be able to find work right off. And he thinks as a result of that, that there will probably be a spike in crime. What do you think about that?
Of course, because people aren't saving any of this money usually, so that's the problem from the beginning. We don't have a little reserve, so of course it's going to happen. Property crime is definitely going to increase. Fast and easy property crimes, but that's a very small percentage of the population. Of course, it's exaggerated in the media sometimes. But you're going to have, there's a lot of jobs ready for them. So that's the good part about this. As soon as that money's cut off, you're going to see plenty of people online looking for work to get that money coming in again. So I think that's why we need to cut it off. When unemployment's at a certain level, we should have only limited unemployment. If there was full employment and we had no more jobs, relatively speaking, then we're doing so well. We have the tax money to help people along through the good time. The bad times, we need less unemployment money because there's jobs available. Sometimes you don't want to take a certain job, but sometimes we have to get by. And that's sort of the normal growth as opposed to being stagnant with the unemployment. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So I just want to close by saying this. I always appreciate you coming on, but I did not think about the fact that April 15th is now May 15th. So the tax deadline is 5 days away. And
Right.
You're up to your eyeballs in work, and that's why we were a few minutes late getting on live. And I appreciate those who patiently waited for us. And so I appreciate you always, but I especially appreciate you coming on today. I shouldn't have called you today, but I'm glad I did.
And if I could just shout out, my website is chriswhalencpa.com. We specialize in all things accounting and taxes for families and businesses in New Jersey and around the country. And thank you to the audience, Gary. Thank you so much. And I would see you May 15th at April 15th at 11:59 if you called me. You know that.
Yes, I know. So we'll break bread. We're opening up again. Maybe we'll get together for that.
Well, I saw, I look for little hints of things opening. I know you want to go, but at the diner I went to the other day, they actually had a menu, a real menu with a spiral binding. A full menu. It wasn't a paper one they threw away. I said, oh, there's another little step towards normalcy, right?
Agreed. And here in Jersey, I know we have a global audience, but here in Jersey, and the weather hasn't been accommodating quite yet. We love going down the Jersey Shore. And my favorite band finally got a gig. They've been silent the day the music died, for over a year now. They finally got it in your neighborhood at the Oyster Bay. Is that what
Oyster Point?
Oyster Point. They got a gig, Golden Seal, the band, on Thursday, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And I would go there with you if I didn't have to go to work.
Well,
and
awesome.
if you weren't on a tax deadline.
Thank you very much again. Always call me if you need me.
Thanks a lot, brother.